will speak shortly for a short period of time. What she wants you to do is really have a conversation with her and to help her to work out how she deals with the challenges she faces as the Minister for Social Development, and in particular the problems that are caused in her work and in the department by the very divided and segregated nature of our society. That does cause particular problems and difficulties with regard to housing, neighbourhood renewal, and so on. And it's that that the Minister would like to focus on.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here in Boma this afternoon. I don't intend to make a speech as such, but I do want to provide you with some context for this afternoon's discussion. So here's how I see things. I have responsibility for social development, which includes housing and regeneration, but also a much wider remit for how our society and community develops. We have had an end to the campaign of violence. Guns have been largely silent for some years now, and I think we can all be grateful for that. We also have an unprecedented degree of political stability, with unionists and nationalists locked together in government. So with the absence of violence and with political institutions in place, you would think that our society could move on. That's what John Hume called the healing process, and that could now begin. Yet, if we are honest with ourselves and with each other, we have moved on very little, despite the success of the peace process. And I know that the people of Boma came together in the face of much adversity several years ago. But I ask you, should it take adversity to move us together? We need to be moving together as of ourselves. And if we just look at the evidence, we still live apart, we largely socialise apart, we are educated apart. And to me, that is just not normal. It may have become the norm for here and for Northern Ireland in general, but it is not the behaviour of a normal society. We have established tolerance and even respect between our communities, but peaceful coexistence is no substitute for a shared future or a shared society. And if we do nothing about all of this, then that cycle of segregation, that cycle of single identity communities simply repeats itself into the next generation. And I would suggest to you that the next generation will expect us to be able to break that cycle of segregation now. And that is what we are being asked to do. I'm not here, ladies and gentlemen, to speak for the whole of government. And moving on is not the sole responsibility of DSD. But it certainly struck me that in housing, we could do something about the extent of segregation. Likewise, when it comes to urban regeneration, we just don't need shiny new buildings. We need shared spaces. Any one of you should be able to walk through our cities, our towns, our neighbourhoods, without fear of being attacked because of your political, religious, or racial affiliation. And essentially, all of this is about our society developing and moving on. And we have to start this conversation, this engagement somewhere. We know the change we need will not come about in a short period of time, and it will not come about of its own accord. I'm the Minister for Social Development, and I want to see what I can do to develop our society in the right way. And I want to hear your words, your conversation, and I want your views and observations on how we create that shared future, how we live together, how we tackle segregation, and how we move forward. And that's why I'm in OMA today. I have some ideas of my own, but I definitely want to hear them today, so that I can feed those back into DSD, policy making, and into the wider executive. I know there are many of you who may have particular singular issues about housing or other aspects of DSD. There are officials here and myself, and we will deal with those issues at the end or in the margins of the meeting, when we'll be very happy to have a conversation with you. But essentially today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to have a chat with you about how we develop our society onwards, how we get people to live together, and how we create that shared society, which is our hope for the future.
Welcome the Minister here today. It's fantastic and for our officials, and hopefully where she leads, the other 10 will hopefully follow.
But I think the town centres are a good opportunity to develop already shared future. That's where we should be spending money. Instead of building new houses, regenerate the town centres. The flats are there, the buildings are there. Most of our town centres, the top floors are empty. So I welcome you here today. It's good to see you out and about. And from a Chamber of Commerce, we would like to see vitality back into the town centres.
He's wrong about shared futures and everything else. But the power that is in Northern Ireland at the minute, they are so much dwelled in the past and their history and what is going to be talked about them. They have no time to think about the future.
We have to have a starting point of we're going to have a shared future. At the present moment in the banking sector, we're working quite well, but we're working quite well together, and we intend to do that, especially in this particular area here. But we are restricted because of what we can do, what we can't do.
What you were saying to me is that in order to build a shared future and a shared society, then everybody needs the same equality of say, equality of representation. That's fair enough. That was the very essence of the Good Friday Agreement. It was about equality of representation. You raised the issue about how you build a shared future, and the politicians think too much in the past. I am a politician who thinks about the future, and that's why we are in OMA today, to talk about how we can live together, how we can create the conditions to provide a shared future. For too long we lived apart, for too long we socialised apart, and I think there's more that unites us than separates us, so we need to concentrate on that. For example, we're going into very difficult financial circumstances, and we all know up until now the duplication of services has been quite costly. Therefore, that is one way where we can reduce cost but ensure a better, perhaps, delivery of service for the people on the ground through having a shared future. And I'm glad because you're concentrating on the issues and the mindsets and the need to build confidence and trust in our communities, and recognising that there are still problems and those problems have to be addressed.
But I'm hoping that the development proposed for the listing on these sites would tick really all of your questions: how we share a future, how we live together, how we tackle segregation, and how we move forward. Each school will still have its own particular ethos, but the opportunity for young people to share sport, IT and so on, I think is very worthwhile.
You raised in Ramona House, and I do well remember going there, and it is a partnership really with Oakley Housing Association, and I met many of the residents there, and so how much they enjoyed that particular place and how they were living in a shared space. And it was the issue that they had something in common. And if I could take this in Ellie, first of all, we're working with the Department of Education, and it's all about shared services, if that comes about. And it's about, if you have shared services, it means you have people from different denominations, staff and children, working together, sharing those services, also cutting costs and making money available for other services. So that's important. I launched last year and this year shared neighbourhoods, which is an existing housing estates, where people get involved in activities, shared activities, and particularly in areas where there has been disputatious issues, where there has been issues of conflict. Not necessarily political or religious conflict, but just maybe some antisocial behaviour. But those people have made a concerted effort to come together, and they then end up being a shared neighbourhood, bring forward projects, and it's good for the community and good for their estate. There are also shared future housing estates, the ones I'm referring to, that the housing executives screen to see what the housing associations can do. A number of months ago, I opened one in Sion Mills. There will be one in Lawrencetown in County Down, and I think Josephine mentioned some there in Gordabrack. So we are doing that. But you also raised the fundamental issue of allocations, because in many ways the allocation system as it currently stands can perpetuate division. So I am also currently looking at that to see how we can insert shared future into the allocation system. So it's not by force, or you can't force a shared future on people, but you're offering them the choice. But you're also ensuring through a mechanism at the same time that shared future and people living together is enabled. And if you've any, and in fact, I know that in Derry, there was a North and West Housing Association brought forward a very good social housing scheme. There was an arrangement with Derry City Council who provided a community facility in a certain part of Derry, and it was well worth a visit, because you see the community working and living together. But it also deals with the issues of antisocial behaviour, and because people have an ownership in that estate, they also have an ownership of the activities, and they want to move forward and proceed together. You referred to the Life and Times survey, which was published last year. Very interesting statistic you provided, but there is also another interesting statistic which brings me back to the general issue. 8 out of every 10 people in Northern Ireland said they wanted to live together rather than live apart. And I think on that basis, knowing that there is a willingness, knowing that there is a commitment, and knowing that there is a dedication within the community to live together, we must move along on that part. Finally, I want to thank you all for your contributions, for your observations, for your views, and of course your questions. But we must never forget that there is more that unites us than divides us, and that we have to move forward, and we have to keep thinking of those issues of how we create that shared future, create that shared society, think of issues, think of ways how we can live together. How do we tackle segregation and single identity neighbourhoods and communities, and how do we move forward as a community? And that is the principal issue. Once again, my thanks and safe journey home.